Live. Holy cow, it's been a while. Gotta blow off the dust on this whole setup, man. Knock down some of the cobwebs. I gotta do several technological things to get us off to the races. This is a very casual episode today, you guys. We're just gonna be hanging out doing a little bit of research. That's an important part of our job is doing our research so we can articulate these subjects as calmly, rationally, objectively, succinctly as we can. That's our job, right? Get the message out to the masses in an understandable way that doesn't light too many fires of confrontation. We're just trying to share the facts and we're trying to share that our positions are entirely morally unimpeachable. We have our desires, other people have their desires. We got to talk through this stuff. It's not that big of a deal, okay? Right? So I want to make sure we're live. So I got to do a browser check. I got to toss a story up on Instagram to let all of you 24,000 followers over on Instagram know that we're live because I haven't been live. Gosh, I don't even know in how many months? Several. That does not mean I've been inactive. Hopefully you guys are following me on Instagram because you see 20, 30 stories a day over there, 500 plus content pieces shared over there per month. And things are going well on Instagram, other than the fact that we can't go live. And I actually dug into how long that ban has left on it. It's like 200 and some 200 something days left of being banned. So it was a full 1 year ban. I got banned back in October, and so I won't be able to go live on Instagram again until October of this year, which sucks. I mean, I got 623 followers on Rumble, 800 followers over on YouTube, 24,000 on Instagram, and I can't go live over there, which is, that's pretty frustrating because the platform would grow exponentially if I could actually do live streams over there. But it is what it is. I've actually thought about trying to go live on my backup account on Instagram, which also has like 4,000 followers. But you know how these people work, okay? They'll find any reason to ban you. And one of the reasons you can get banned is what do they say? It's when you try to get around a ban. It's like I can't circumscription of bans or something. There's a word for it. I can't remember what it is. But if you try to circumscribe your ban by creating a new channel and going live on it, then evasion, I think is what they call it. I don't know. But long story short, it's just not worth trying to go live on the smaller 4,000 follower channel to get my main 24,000 follower channel banned. So I have to sit in timeout for an entire year, unable to reach tens of thousands of people live because Facebook is owned by Mark Zuckerberg Goldmanstein. It is what it is. Facebook obviously owns Instagram. And so when you're in the devil's playground, you got to adhere to the devil's rules, sadly enough. So let's do a story real quick, just to let all of our Instagram homies know what's up, that they can actually see me live for the first time in ages. All right, let's see here. Story. How are we looking? All right, good enough. What's going on, you guys? Good morning. Happy Sunday. If you want to check out something very, very special, then you should flip over to my Rumble channel right now because I'm live. Like, really, right now, I'm live on Rumble. So, I have a very fun session planned for us where we're going to do some research on the Jewish question. We're going to compile some receipts. I already know all the receipts are out there, but I need to go and accumulate them, get them all written down because I want to consolidate a nice, pretty polished up documentary about how whites and Jews have very separate interests. And we need to be able to speak to the half a dozen or more very, very obvious differences that there are, conflicts of interest, I should say. So don't miss this show. Go watch it live right now. You can chat with me. You can interact live with your favorite influencer, or you can catch it on replay. All right. So let me drop a link to the Rumble in here on the story. All of this tech setup. This is one of the reasons why streaming is always a bit tedious for me, having to get all these things fired up. All right. And of course, I got my white monster. Oh, man, that's delicious. Where is my feed here? Not now. Share, copy. Head over back to our Instagram. Drop a link in the story. Link, paste. Watch live. Watch and chat live. There we go. All right. There we go. Um, so I have these notes. This is crazy, you guys. I woke up at like, I don't know, 11 o'clock last night, 12 o'clock. I'd only been sleeping for a couple hours. And I had these thoughts. And this is like my real life. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about the Jewish question. And I was just putting together in my notes on my phone the number of different ways that whites have a very obvious difference when it comes to their collective group interest as compared to Jews. And this is all stuff that's just like flat out objectively true. This isn't like me speculating. This is what I think about the Jews and what I think about white people. And you'll see as I start to walk through some of the examples that this stuff is like, okay, it just is what it is. You know, Asians have a different society than Indians. Indians have a different society than Africans. Africans have a different society than Hispanics. And white European people have a different society than all of the above. And as I have said since day one of this platform, anybody within any of those groups who has a preference of their own people's cultural methods, the way they stand up civilizations, we shouldn't call that immoral. We shouldn't call that racism. Shouldn't call that xenophobia, bigotry. And in the case of whites, we get our own special title called white supremacy. So let's pull up this note here. Hopefully it's legible because I was seriously like, woke up, roll over, picked up my phone, and I just start writing stuff down. Nationalistic priority, ethnic nepotism, openly celebrate ethnicity versus white pride being illegal, their voting track record, their religious affiliation, their opinions on assimilation, and then the details of Christianity versus Judaism, which that alone is an entire documentary. And so whether or not this becomes like a one pager, like a visual aid of, it's like two columns, I guess technically three columns where you have the subject, then you have whites, and then you have Jews. And on the whites, you have here's how they feel about nationalism, and then here's how the Jews feel about nationalism. And then you have what does nepotism mean for whites? Well, it's called white supremacy versus in Jews, that's just, a standard part of our culture. And then some of the ways they practice that nepotism that are fully legal and encouraged for Jews, such as kosher loans, the right to return to Israel with legal protections, even if you're a felon. All of these dozens and dozens and dozens of Jewish advocacy groups that are explicitly for Jews, advocating for Jews, that would be in their column of ethnic nepotism. And there's nothing wrong with nepotism. I'm not saying nepotism is wrong. It's a good thing. You have nepotism towards your own family, towards your family group, towards the friends that you make at work versus strangers. everybody practices and engages in nepotism. So it's not to say that nepotism is wrong. What is wrong is to say, I can partake in nepotism with my people, you can't. When you do it, it's immoral and it means that you hate people who aren't like you. And that's what the Jews have presented to the mainstream. They have said anytime white people engage in nepotism, preference of giving jobs, promotions, wealth, influence, trying to keep that within the group of whites, well, that's white supremacy, and that cannot be tolerated. But when Jews do it, hey, there's no upper limit to that. There's no restricting amount of Jewish nepotism that exists. They could just go on to infinity. So, ethnic nepotism, I mentioned the first one, nationalistic priority. When you look at the various European countries, let's just take France, or you could take Germany, Spain, Portugal, Britain, Scotland, Ireland. Just pick one. Doesn't really matter. Let's pick Germany. So let's pick Germany. Would it be morally wrong for a German person to insist that Germany is for Germans? I don't think so. Now, Jews think that's wrong. Jews think that that's Nazism. And they think that Nazism is Satan running amok. So when they say Israel, the nation of Jews, should be a nation for Jews, run by Jews, majority demographically Jewish, concentrated on the religion of the Jews, that's not a nationalistic problem. That's totally morally righteous. It's a good thing. Jewish people need to protect their people, their culture, their religion, and so they have to have an ethno-religious nation for themselves. Now, if you're a white person living in Germany, not so much. If you're a white person living in France who says, hey, France is for the French, not for other people, not so much. If you're British and you say, hey, this is our country, we should keep our British cultural practices, not so much. Oddly enough, while it's okay for the Jews, it's not okay for whites. It's completely fine for Africans. You know, there's 50 some odd African cultures or countries, and nobody really cares when African people say Nigeria is for Nigerians, Egypt is for Egyptians. They say, yeah, that kind of makes sense, right? And in East India, if you want to live in Bangladesh, then they say, okay, it makes sense to keep the majority of your population of your own people with your own leaders representative of the Bangladesh people. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So it's not a problem for East Indians. It's not a problem for Africans. If in China, which is currently 92% Chinese, if you want to keep it that way, that's not a problem. And if you're Japanese and you say Japan should remain majority Japanese, currently 97% Japanese, that's not a problem either. So you can be Asian and have a nationalistic identity that's tied to ethnicity, and you can be East Indian, and you can be African, and you can be Jewish, you can be Hispanic. You just can't be white and insist that your country needs to stay tied to its ethnic origins. The people who built the country deserve to keep it. And so, nationalistic priority or nationalistic pride in white countries, as I said, totally socially taboo. It's called white supremacy. They hearken it back to Nazism, which is inherently implying that there is a existential threat to any Jewish people around if they live in a white country who insist that they need to stay majority white. Can never happen again. Never again is now. That's what they tell us. So there's contradictions with white people versus Jews when it comes to nationalism. There's contradictions with whites and Jews when it comes to ethnic nepotism. They can have all these Jewish advocacy groups. They can have the right to return exclusively for their own people to their nation and even protect them from criminal charges such as child rape, such as treason, like Jonathan Pollard. They can loan money with zero interest exclusively to people of their own kin, kosher loans. But if we're a white person were to say, hey, maybe it's best for the white community that when we do loans, we give them interest free. And actually, when we give loans to other people, we're going to rape them with interest. No, only Jewish people are allowed to do that. Okay. If you're a Jewish person and you run a bank, you can absolutely rape everybody except your own people with interest. You can practice that nepotism if you're Jewish. But when you're white, and we're going to say this 10,000 times during this stream, when you're white, no, sir, absolutely not. That is a Jewish privilege. Okay, so then you got open celebration of ethnicity versus white pride being literally illegal. In the previous administration with Joe Biden, we saw them labeling anybody who was tagged as a white pride participating individual, anybody who outwardly publicly expressed that they have a preference to live amongst white people, that they think governmental policy should protect white people, that white people deserve to be the majority in the country, that white people should be leading the country. They called those people not only white supremacists, they called them domestic terrorists. They actually said that white people who care about their fellow white people are terrorists. And again, as mentioned in the previous point, when there are 20, 30, 40 Jewish advocacy groups who say, hey, there's a collective group interest for Jews that we got to protect, we got to watch out for each other, no problem there. In fact, if you say that you have a problem with that, you're called anti Semitic, and then they go and create a law and a task force to chase you down for criticizing the fact that they have their own advocacy groups and they partake in this nepotism to the nth degree. So when you do it, you're a terrorist. When you object to them doing it, you're anti Semitic and you can never get a job again. You can never be a public facing figure. You can't work in government. You can't be a church leader. What's going on here? Like, I don't understand. What's with the double standard? And it goes beyond just how the Jews have carved out this exception, whites versus Jews. They have bolstered and enabled all non whites with these same privileges. If you want to have a Hispanic advocacy group, if you want to have a Black employee network at work, Latin employee network at work, or in your community, if you want to segregate and advocate for any of these other racial groups or ethnic groups, so long as you're not white, not only is that okay, that is financed and reimbursed by your federal government, by your state government, by the company that you work for. The moment you try to do it as a white person, though, okay, I don't need to repeat that. It's going to start sounding like a broken record. The moment you try to do that as a white person, game over. Now, the voting track record. Have you guys ever looked up when it comes to this fake democracy that we have, if you believe that voting is real and actually does anything at all? You can look at group behavior in participation in politics. And in fact, not only can you as an individual with one singular vote go and do that exercise, this exercise is done every political cycle, whether it's 2 years in the midterm, 4 years in the presidential cycle, your local politics, every single political think tank that exists engages in the analysis of group behavior, and they do so at a racial level. They do so at a religious level. They do so at an economic level, looking at the different classes. and they look at the intersectionality of all of the above. So you can look at, as any presidential campaign would look at, how do Black people as a group vote? How do white people as a group vote? How do Jews vote? And I'm interested to find out what this information will tell us. I have a feeling I know, and I feel like I've seen the numbers before, but let's just do a quick Google search. Um, Voting. I wonder how smart AI is here. How do Jews vote in the US? For congressional and Senate races since 1968, so that's your entire life, American Jews have voted about 70 to 80% for Democrats. And we all know what that's coded to mean. Democrats is obviously left leaning political ideology, highly atheist, highly multicultural, highly egalitarian. The genders are interchangeable, tear down all of the laws around theft, vandalization. Hey, man, these people just had a hard time. It's not their fault they had to rob and loot the CVS. Legalize all drugs, legalize prostitution, legalize gay marriage, push pornography. That's the Democrat Party. And 70 to 80% of all Jews vote Democrat since 1968. This support increased to 87% during the 2006 elections. Wow. How impressive is that? Just out of curiosity, let's ask, how do whites vote in the United States? Can I get an AI summarized answer here, not like 500 articles? Pew Research Center, United States, eligible voters by race. Come on, I need a split by political party, please. All major races. Okay, they sent me like this 50-page PDF. It's not what I need. Let's ask Chat GPT. Official Chat GPT website. Seriously, I'm not going to make an account just for this purpose here, you guys. Ask anything. Okay. How do whites vote in the United States? Populating, populating. Okay, here we go. It's giving me like this really, really long answer. I guess I gotta be more specific. What percent of whites vote Republican in the United States? Take a sip of our beverage here while this thinks about it. 57% of whites voted for Donald Trump in 2024, according to AP News. And if you dig further into that, I've been discussing a lot lately the woman problem. Watch this trick right here. Watch this fun trick you can do. What percent of white males vote Republican? That still sounds low, but this thing says 60%. I'm not believing that. By age group, young white men doesn't have a number. It just says that they grew. Everybody knows that. So, anyways, the trend being your entire life that Jews have voted overwhelmingly between 70 to 80 or higher percent for liberal political leaders, whereas whites have voted historically overwhelmingly for Republicans. That number has started to be shaved down as women's liberation has destroyed the country. But even still, thanks to white men, we are clinging to above a 50% ratio of voting for the alleged conservative political candidate that were served up. So this just represents, as I was saying, the difference between whites and Jews manifests itself in all of these various ways. You have the nationalism perspective, you have ethnic nepotism, you have the inability for whites or the inability for whites to just simply demonstrate pride in their ethnic heritage versus Jews openly celebrating it. You have the voting track record. Here's a pretty obvious one: religious affiliation. I probably shouldn't have used Chat GPT for that because we all know literally a Jew designed Chat GPT. So they're always going to modify their results, very similar to Jews owning Google, to not help us in these conversations if they can help it. But what I was curious about was what percent of Jews in America were Christian? Just out of curiosity. Pew Research Center says only 21% of Jewish adults say religion is very important in their lives at all. So not everybody even knows that the majority of Jews in the United States don't even care about religion. Okay, that's not true for whites. As a majority, go back one lifetime, whites in America, who were 90% of the population for the first 350 years from 1600 to 1960, 90% self-reported to be Christian. And here you have 4 out of 5 Jews don't even care about any religion. They're atheist or agnostic. This is according to Pew Research. I was looking to find out how many of them are Christian. So, of the 1 out of 5, 20% of Jews who are actually religious, according to Pew Research as of 2021, about two-thirds identify with a religion other than Judaism, usually Christianity. Percentage of Jews in the US population, 2%. That's the overall percentage. So let's see, can we get any more detailed on that? But that starts to sound something like 15% of all Jews out there, maybe 10% are Christian. So, in terms of group average, group behavior, when you look at the collective body of whites in America, bare minimum 50% of them are Christian. And I mean, that's like being really negative and pessimistic because America as a whole is currently 50% Christian, and that includes all these minority groups who are not Christian. Let's see if we can answer that question real quick. What percent of whites in America are Christian? Around two-thirds is what this first report says, 66%, according to PPRI, Census of America on Religion. So whites are literally 6 to 7 times more likely to be Christian in America than Jews. Do you think that matters? I think it matters. And so when you're talking about analyzing group behavior, these are the things that you start to go through the checklist and say, like, they don't care about nationalism. They partake in vigorous nepotism of themselves and criticize us when we do the same. They try to make it illegal for us to criticize it when they do it, and they call us terrorists when we do it. Their voting track record for your entire life has been overwhelmingly liberal, bringing about all of these social ills: multiculturalism, feminism, abortion, LGBT, trans madness. You go look at their religious affiliation, and 1 out of 10 of them might be Christian, maybe. Then you have the subject of assimilation. We all know America's history is the conglomeration of many different European people coming to America in the early 1600s and the centuries thereafter. As I said before, from 1600 to 1960, America was 90% white, and that mixture of white people came from half a dozen or more European countries. keeping in mind the whole conversation is about white group behavior versus Jewish group behavior. On the conversation of assimilation, America, as we were explaining for the first 350 years, was one long practice of mutual agreement that in order for all of us to get along, whether you're British, French, Polish, from the Netherlands, from Sweden, wherever you came from, we got to agree that you had some best practices, we had some best practices. We actually have a lot in common. The most important commonality being our shared love of Jesus Christ. As mentioned, 90% Christian for the first 350 years. And so we all agreed that we don't need to fiercely hold onto our ethnic identity from our previous association where we came from and say, no, no, this is an Irish community, this is a British community, this is a Swedish community, and so forth. And we said, because we have so much in common, because we share the same God, let's just choose to put some of these differences aside and acknowledge the fact that we have so much more in common and assimilate and move on. And that's what we did. And America became the most successful economically, the safest militarily, most liberal in terms of protecting individual rights, but still maintaining a morally upright society as compared to the entire world. Nobody else was as successful in all of those things, protecting individual liberties, but still walking in good alignment with Jesus, becoming the global hegemony when it comes to the economy and the military. We did this through the combination of multiple European cultures coming together, agreeing that we share the same faith, and protecting our identity, the European culture, our faith. But we did negotiate that we had to assimilate somewhat of our differences and let them be. Jews, on the other hand, to this day, their religion tells them not to assimilate, not to adopt the identity of the nation, not to adopt the religion of the nation, not to adopt the culture of the nation, because that would be to discard their Jewish identity. When all these European people came here, they said, you know what? It's more important that I'm an American than I am Irish, that I am British, that I am Swedish, whatever else. We said it's more important. We have a common goal now. We're going to be Americans, and that's enough for us. That's not how Jews see it. They say, no, no, I'm still Jewish. And I'm going to go to my Jewish groups and I'm going to give my money to Jewish politicians and I'm going to donate to Jewish causes and I'm going to fiercely protect the Jewish community. And especially religious Jews believe with religious conviction that God has told them not to assimilate wherever they are. And that is to protect their lineage, which is fine. Everybody should protect their lineage. But you have to understand how that creates a conflict of interest. If you have a religious devotion to your ethnicity, to your lineage, that you are unwilling to negotiate about, then that's a different mindset than all of the European people who I mentioned coming here before saying, hey, it's not a religious thing. Like, okay, I understand we've had some conflicts. You know, Britain had a pretty bad rap with some of the things they did. So did France. A lot of people didn't like the Scottish, the Irish, the Italians. You know, there was plenty of beef to go around within the white community. But we said this isn't a religious conviction. We don't believe that the single most important thing about ourselves is our ethnicity. So we can put that aside and we can cohabitate and become more like each other rather than keeping each other at arm's distance. And that is just simply not the case of the Jewish community, not the religion, not the ever present Jewish identity, which includes both religious and non religious Jews. And then you have the matter of affiliation with the nation of Israel and how all Jews, religious or non Jews, have a deep seated, what should we say? What adjective can we use? It's so much fun to come up with the best words, isn't it? How do Jews feel about Israel? What's a fair way to put it? Um, a lot of people would say that they care more about it than any other nation, including the nation they live in, including the nation that has made them prosperous, that has protected them from persecution, that invited them into their country, that has elevated them into the most powerful positions in the world, sitting in the White House, running the most powerful economy in the world, running the media institutions of the most powerful nation in the world, dictating the education curriculum of the most powerful nation in the world. These are all places that we have allowed Jews to occupy. And what have they done with that privilege? They have demonized white people. They have destroyed the economy of the country. They opened our borders. They created a mythology around their history of victimhood and browbeat anybody who questions it. That's what they have done with those privileges. And of course, they use all of those positions and platforms to advocate for the Jewish nation of Israel. Non negotiable. If you have any problems with the behavior of Israel or the way that it meddles in American politics, then you're anti Semitic, which we went over before. Means you cannot hold positions in the government. It's difficult to work in academia. You'll lose your job. It's difficult to even just be a regular average Joe if you're labeled anti Semitic. Certainly can't be a celebrity. Look what happened to Mel Gibson, Kanye West, Kyrie Irving, all of these other athletes, movie stars, etc. Who ever say anything. Look what happened to Michael Jackson. Look what happened to Richard Nixon. Look what happened to JFK. The list goes on and on. And so, white people don't have a fierce devotion to a foreign nation. I myself have Swedish ancestry, so I care about the Swedish people. I'd like to visit. I'd like to see, my great 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 grandfather's homeland and learn a bit more about it. But I'm not donating a single penny to Sweden, and I'm not insisting that you donate money to Sweden. And I'm certainly not looking to infiltrate the government and change our foreign policy to advocate on behalf of Sweden. I have no interest in doing that. Jews, however, will literally devote their lives to doing that. Take somebody like Barbara Lerner Specter, who is an American Jew who chose to move to Sweden to do what? To, I don't know, protect Sweden's identity, make sure it stays Swedish, majority Swedish people with Swedish leaders. Is that why Barbara Lerner Specter, an American Jew, moved to Sweden? No. She went there with the specific intent to help Sweden become a more multicultural country. And she went on the record saying it's not just Sweden, all of Europe has not yet embraced multiculturalism. And it is not just her as one Jew, but it is the collective international group of Jews who have a responsibility to help Europe become and embrace multiculturalism. And European people should be shamed that they have yet to embrace multiculturalism. And it is the Jews' duty to help them embrace that. That's Barbara Lerner Specter. That's a American who chose not to adopt the American identity of simply caring about the success of America. She chose to go to a foreign country, specifically a European country, and deracinate it on behalf of minority groups, such as Jews. You'll see that a lot. You'll see that a lot. People like George Soros, Larry Fink, these Jews who use their international positions to subvert the identity of European cultures, whether it's through infiltrating politics or using their influential war chest of trillions of dollars, or in the case of the Jeffrey Epstein spy ring, utilizing blackmail and other illicit tactics. There's nothing that they won't do. Things that are off the table for righteous, moral people, Christians, such as deception, murder, rape, those are all on the table for the nation of Israel, for the Jewish trillionaires, destroying our corporations, destroying our nation's currency, destroying our nation's borders. It's all fine. They don't care when immigrants rape white women, right? They don't care that the US dollar has 1/10 the purchasing power of what it did, a couple of lifetimes ago. They don't care that you can't afford a house. They don't care that half of the country is no longer white. They literally do not care at all. If there is any demonstration of care, it is a celebration of this fact. Why is that? Because Jews have been a minority everywhere they have lived for thousands of years. And so any culture who has a strong desire to remain homogenous, a strong sense of nationalism, well, that makes any minority group stand out like a sore thumb. This is one of the most recurring themes of what is called the Jewish problem. When you show up as an alien, bringing an alien culture, an alien language, an alien religion, alien interests to a foreign nation, you stand out like an alien. And so the only way to make yourself stand out less is to invite other aliens. Maybe your practices don't look so weird if you, I don't know, invite 26 million Hispanics into the country because they show up with a completely alien culture, alien language, alien interests, animosity toward the native people who built this country. And now suddenly you got a whole big problem with 20% of the United States being Hispanic. So it's kind of hard to focus on the 2% of Jews who occupy positions that are far more influential, but by raw numbers seem like they're not a big deal. Because as I said, you have 25, 30, 40 million Hispanic people running around trying to push their world beliefs on America. That we owe something to them for what happened in America 400 years ago, where their ancestors lost control of this land. They want to fight about that. You have all the blacks in America, which are 12% of the country, which would be what? 40 million black people, something like that. You have the Jewish civil rights movement writing speeches for Martin Luther King, standing up the NAACP and the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center to agitate all of these racial conflicts to draw attention away from their alien influence. And with their control of the media, they perpetuate all of these alien cultures and say, hey, if Hispanics want to speak Spanish and refuse to assimilate, learn the language of the country, who are you to say that that's wrong? You're just a bigot. You just hate Hispanic people. And if Africans have some kind of, I don't know, inability to control their violent impulses and their impulses to steal If they just demonstrate low impulse control in general, who are you to criticize that? That's their culture. And in fact, the reason they act that way is your fault. And so this is what the Jewish people have done. They've created all of these flares of distraction with all of these other minorities, aliens, cultures that have nothing to do with the success of America, so that you get distracted. They invite all of these Muslims into the country. How did they get here? Oh, well, they're refugees. They're fleeing violence. Their poor countries are being bombed. And so they're just fleeing the danger of their country. And they just need a safe home to come and live in America. Okay, why are their countries being bombed? Does it have something to do, all these Muslim countries, does it have something to do with, oh, I don't know, 1948, where previously in a majority Muslim land, Jews from Europe came and instituted themselves on the land and ethnically cleansed it, pushed them out, violently raped and murdered people? It's an event called the Nakba. You can look it up. The current nation of Israel didn't just fall out of the sky into existence. That land was occupied by people. And the Jews, with help from Britain and other European nations who had been subverted by Jewish influence, people whispering in the ears of prime ministers and presidents and bankers, helped finance and militarily enable the creation of Israel in 1948. Keyword militarily. And so they push all these people out of the land with violence, with force, into their neighboring countries. As soon as they get to the neighboring countries, they bomb them because the conflict doesn't go away. Bombing all of them creates refugees, and they say, oh, well, the only safe place for these people to be is America and other European countries. And so that means America has to now inherit all of these refugees that Israel created, thus now creating a whole new tier of Muslim and Arab influence in America. Yet another ethnic and religious distraction to keep ourselves from noticing what people like you and I have noticed, that all of these social ills, the multiculturalism, the failing economy, the changing demographic, the perpetual wars, feminism, the forced communism, globalism, all come from Jews. And that is what is called the Jewish question or the Jewish problem. And until we're able to address this openly with facts, the problem is going to continue. So that wraps up this little session here for this morning. Just to quickly recap the group's behavior of whites versus Jews. If you want to take notes, here's just some of the high level bullets that we are obviously different in terms of our group interests. How we see nationalism, very, very different. The practice of ethnic nepotism being encouraged, backed by the government for Jews, being illegal and persecuted by the government for whites. The voting record of Jews being overwhelmingly liberal for your entire lifetime versus whites being consistently majority conservative. The religious affiliation, we saw what was it? 1 out of 10 Jews are Christian. Only 2 out of 10 Jews are even religious at all. Whereas for almost all of America's history, 90% of whites in America were Christian. Currently, at a minimum, 50, 60% of them were Christian. The matter of assimilation. And then we're not going to get to this one today because this last one is super deep, and that is the differences between the whites' majority religion, Christianity, and the Jews' religion, of those that are actually religious, being Judaism. The very, very stark differences between our religions. Just a couple of highlights: usury, their favorite practice. You have the concept of universal dignity in Christianity, that all humans have a soul, are owed dignity and respect, no matter even what religion they practice, no matter what ethnicity they are, what nation they come from, their class or status. All humans have a soul and they're owed universal rights. That's not true in Talmudic rabbinic Judaism. All non-Jews are goyim. We know that goyim translates to chattel, aka farm animals, who don't even have a human soul. So that's a pretty important difference. How do they feel about lying, deception? Well, look at the nation of Israel's intelligence service, the Mossad. Their official motto is, by way of deception, make war. Okay, well, that's their Jewish nation's publicly stated modus operandi. It's a little different than a Christian nation. You have the Jewish practice of animal sacrifice as part of their religion, still ongoing to this day. And then you have the attachment of religion and land. White people don't believe that God has bestowed European people a certain land, that God bestowed European people America. We think that that was earned through ingenuity and righteous fighting. Just to be frank, we came to America. There were pagan practices here of the Mexica, the Aztec people who were here before us. We presented them the gospel. Some of them adopted it, most of them did not. And we snuffed out those pagan practices as we were directed to by God. But God did not say, you're entitled to this land in perpetuity forever. He said, go spread the good news, which is what we did. Jews have a different perspective, and it's obviously the reason for the last 80 wars of conflict in the Middle East, and it is responsible for the creation of Zionism that has infiltrated Christianity and the entire world at this point on the brink of World War III because of Zionism. That is all tied directly to their religious belief that they are owed a physical land, that God is essentially a real estate agent who said, okay, you're my people. You always get to have this slice of land forever, and you can do anything to get it. If you have to murder tens of thousands of innocent people, by all means, go for it. Doesn't matter. You're God's chosen people. You're owed this land. That's obviously quite different than go spread the good news. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up. Hopefully, this entire second half, the second 30 minutes, even streamed. I have no idea. I can't see the live stream on Rumble. As I said, shat the bed around 30 minutes, and I don't even know if I was live for the second half. But that being said, we at least recorded the session, so I'll upload the full hour to Rumble and to YouTube, and we'll keep this party moving, you guys. We're doing well. We're gradually growing both of those platforms. Not as fast as I would like, but that's on me. It's not on you guys. Well, it is on you if you haven't liked and subscribed and aren't commenting. Then it is your fault. But it's on me simply because sharing content on those platforms is a far more tedious, time involving task than sharing content on Instagram. And that's why my Instagram is what, one 30, 40 times as big as those two platforms, something like that. But that being said, we're going to shut it down. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. I will talk to you again soon.